Hey there, thanks so much for joining me. This is Rachel Burns. I'm a certified financial planner and certified divorce financial analyst. And my firm is called True Worth Financial Planning, and I help newly single women get their finances back in order after a divorce or after the death of a spouse. So I am doing this weekly live series where I talk about a different topic each week. It's either a question that I hear from clients or some topic I'm hearing a lot about. If you have a specific topic that you would like me to cover, please feel free. You can send me a comment. You can email me, send me a DM. I'm happy to talk about whatever you guys want to talk about. So today the topic is in response to a request I got from someone. So this one's for Courtney. And today I'm going to talk about how to save for your kids' college. So this is a topic that's near and dear to me because, as you may know, I have 3.5-year-old twins. So the idea of having two kids in college at the same time is kind of horrifying to me. So this is something I think a lot about, and I have my college savings that I've set up for them. And so I'm happy to talk about my experience with that and give you guys some pointers. So what I'm going to talk about today, I'm going to talk about what types of accounts you can use to save for college, where you can open these types of accounts, so what types of financial institutions you can go to, how you can invest the money, and then how you can figure out how much you need to save in these accounts. So let's go ahead and jump into it. First of all, you have some different options in terms of what type of account you can use to save this money. So let's just go through the options. One option, probably the most obvious option, is you can open a savings account. You could even open a separate savings account that's just set aside for college funds. And the benefit of a savings account is that this money is very, very easily accessible. You can get access to money in your savings account same day. You can get it wired. It's super easy to access. Another benefit is you can put as much money as you want in there. But the drawback of a savings account, as you can imagine, it earns practically nothing. So because that money is not invested, it's earning the standard interest rate, which I think is usually about 0.01%. And maybe you can get as lucky as getting 0.5% if you have a high interest savings account. But the interest rate is really, really minimal. Now, the benefit is that the value of the money isn't going up and down like if it was invested in the market. It's stable, but it's not growing really at all. And when you consider how fast the costs of college have been rising, college costs are, I think, rising at an average of about 8% per year. So if this money that you're saving is growing by 0.5% per year, best case scenario, but the cost of college is growing at 8%, then you're not even remotely keeping up with inflation. The money that you've set aside is going to be worth much, much less by the time you actually need to use it for college costs. So unless you have a kid who's older and you're going to be using that money really soon, then you probably don't want to keep this money in a savings account. So another option is you can have like a regular investing account. Now, I'm not talking about an IRA or a retirement account. I mean, like setting up a regular brokerage investing account. And you can open those anywhere. It's super easy to open up. You can put as much money into it as you want. You can invest it in whatever you want. The money is accessible pretty easily, which is nice. But the drawback of this type of account is that you're going to be paying taxes in this account. So there's a couple ways you pay taxes in a regular investing account. Whatever you're invested in, most likely it's going to be generating some dividends and some interest that you're going to be earning along the way. And you have to pay taxes on that income in the year that you receive it. So that's not the end of the world. If you're paying taxes, that means you're making money. But it just sucks because taxes will decrease your return over time, and that means less money available in the end. There's another way that you have to pay taxes in this type of account. So whatever you invest the money in, if that grows, when you go to sell whatever investment that is, then you might have to pay taxes on the gains. So for example, let's say I add $10,000 into this investing account, and then I invest it in stocks and bonds. And then let's say my $10,000 then grows to $30,000 and I sell all the funds and then I take the money out. So then I'm going to be taxed on the gain, which is that $20,000 profit that I made on top of my contributions. So that's going to be taxed in addition to the income that I'm making along the way. This isn't the end of the world. Taxes are kind of a thing that you have to pay when you're making money, but this isn't the ideal structure for saving for college. So what I recommend instead is that you use an account that's specifically set up for college savings. So there's a couple of options for this that I'm not going to get into all of the options, but I would say the most common option is called a 529 account. It's a college savings plan, and it has some special tax benefits because the government is essentially trying to encourage us to save for college. So they give us these tax benefits to incentivize us. So these tax benefits are really nice. So remember in that previous example, when we put in the $10,000, we had to pay taxes on the $20,000 gain. And then we also had to pay taxes on the dividends and interest. In a 529 account, you don't pay taxes on any of that. Any money that you put in, it's already been taxed. You've already paid taxes in your paycheck. Now you take that money, you put $10,000 in a 529 account. It could grow to $30,000. It can grow to $100,000. You're not going to pay taxes on that growth or that income. So the income that you're earning in that account, it's just kind of either getting reinvested or it's building up in cash. You're not paying taxes as you go along. So that tax benefit can really be valuable, especially if you're in a higher tax bracket. Then that tax benefit saves you even more money in the long run. And that just means more money available for college. So it's a really nice perk. It's something I think is good to take advantage of if you're trying to save for college. Once you've decided that you want to use a 529 account, then you need to figure out where you're going to open it. You have many different options. Most financial institutions will offer that type of account. You can even, if you have a financial advisor that works with a certain institution, sometimes they can open a 529 account for you. The only thing is when you have an advisor attached to it, you're generally paying a little bit more, but you're also getting service. You're getting the advice that comes along with that. They help you process paperwork and if you're taking withdrawals, they help you process all that. But just keep in mind to have the one-on-one help with that, you're going to pay a little bit extra. But the other option is you can choose one of the state plans that any of the 50 states offer. So you can choose the plan that's offered by the state where you live. So for example, I live in California. Our state plan is called ScholarShare. Or you can even go outside of your state and choose any other state's plan. It's kind of weird that they let you do that, but you can really choose whichever plan you like the best. And so you might be wondering, well, how do you even narrow that down? You probably want to compare the costs of the plan, the costs of the funds, the different fund options that they give you, if they're good investments. You might want to look at how much they allow you to contribute, like if there's a minimum amount that they make you contribute. You want to look at what the process is like for when you go to take out money, whether it's easy or hard or whatever. Those are some types of things that you can kind of compare when you're looking at different plans. But just keep in mind, there's a whole bunch of different options. It's a little bit overwhelming. You could just choose the plan that your state offers. And the state plans are generally a little bit cheaper because you don't have that advisor that's attached to it who's like advising you and managing all of the admin for you. So the state plans are typically a little bit cheaper. So that is up to you where you want to open that. You can just go on Google and you can look at, 529 plans for my state, and you can look at the different custodians that are available. So once you choose where you want to open up this account, then you need to figure out what you're going to invest the money in. And each plan is going to have different options that are available within that plan, and they're all a little bit different. So they a lot of times will offer what's called an age-based plan. And if you're familiar with target date funds that are in like a 401k account, they work very similarly. So there's different funds that are available depending on how old your child is. So for example, my kids are 3.5. I would choose the fund that corresponds with that target college start date. And they might express that as, they're going to start college in 2030 or 2040 or whatever year. Then whoever is managing that fund, they're managing the funds for all these other people who are in that same time frame as you. So they're investing the money as if that money isn't going to be needed for about 14 years until they're 18. So when that's the case with a younger kid, because there's so many years ahead of them, they can be a little bit more aggressive with their investments. They can be a little heavier in stocks, a little bit lighter in bonds. If there's a lot of volatility in the value of the fund, it doesn't really matter that much because they don't need to touch that money until 14 years from now. So they can afford to take a little bit more risk with those investments. If a kid was a little bit older, let's say you started a 529 account when your kid is 14, you're going to need that money sooner. So they're going to take a little bit less risk. They're not going to have quite as much of the money in stocks, and they're going to have maybe a little bit more in bonds and things that are more stable. But what's nice about these age-based options, so for example, the one that I started for my kids when they were babies, it started off as super aggressive. And then as they get older, they're getting a little bit closer to starting college, still quite a ways out. But each year that they get closer, the fund manager is going to be adjusting those investments within the fund. They're going to do it automatically. So automatically over time, the fund managers are going to reduce the amount of stock that's in that fund, and they're going to gradually increase the amount of the more stable investments. So by the time your kids are actually ready to start college, they're not invested so aggressively that, let's say your kids are starting college next year and all of a sudden we have some crazy volatility in the market like we're having right now, for example. You wouldn't have to panic because, oh my gosh, I need this money next year and now I have 30% less or whatever. So the fund, what's really nice about that, those age-based funds are actively managed. They are automatically adjusted. You don't have to go in and do anything. You don't need to go in and say, oh, my kids are getting older. How do I need to adjust these funds? It just does it for you, which is really nice. Some of the 529 plans will have some additional options for you. Like if you wanted to choose your own fund lineup, you don't have to do that. You can totally do the age-based funds, but if you have an interest in it, if you want to, compare the different funds, you can come up with your own lineup if you'd like. So usually they've got several options to choose from, but the age-based funds are very straightforward. You just choose the one that corresponds with your kid's age and when they would start college. So I think that's a good option. And then once you choose that investment, what you can do is set it up so that any contributions to that account automatically just get invested in that fund. So if I am adding money every single month into this account, so in real life, I have a monthly transfer set up into each of my kids' 529s. So money comes in and then a day or so later, it just automatically gets invested in this mutual fund. I don't have to do anything. My financial advisor doesn't have to do anything. Yes, I have a financial advisor, even though I'm a financial advisor. But it's a very automatic process. It's super easy. I don't have to worry about it. So yeah, you'll want to choose something and kind of set it up so that it's on some sort of automated program so it gets invested. So now that you know what type of account, you know where to open this account, you know how to invest it, the hard part is figuring out how much money to put into it. That is a really tough question. And there's a lot of unknowns that we need to kind of figure out before we can answer that question. So let's think about that. Again, let's use my kids as an example. They're 3.5. What could happen between now and 14 years from now in terms of the cost of college? Anything can happen. The costs could keep going at that 8% increase per year, which would be terrible. It could flatten out. It could go down. College could be free. It could be subsidized by the government. It could be all online. I mean, there's like a million different things that could happen in the next 14 years that would majorly impact the cost of college. So you kind of wonder like, well, what do I do? You just have to kind of make some assumptions. And my feeling, this is not any special knowledge at all on my part, but my feeling is the rate at which college costs have been growing is not sustainable. If college were to keep increasing at that rate of 8% per year, sometimes even more, eventually those costs will become so prohibitively high, no one will be able to afford it and no one will go, and then they're going to have to bring it down. So I feel like the rates that we've been seeing of growth in college costs are not sustainable. But I don't know. I don't have any special knowledge. They could keep going up, they could go down, who knows. But my feeling is I don't think they'll keep going up at that rate, but I don't know exactly where they're going to land. So I want to be prepared in case college costs something by the time my kids are in school. So I want to be prepared, and I want to save, and I want to figure out kind of the best amount to save. So not knowing what college costs are going to look like, let's look at another big unknown, and that's what your kids are going to do. So you don't know if your kids are not going to go to college at all. Maybe they're going to want to go to some really expensive private school. Maybe they're going to want to go to trade school or, a junior college first, or maybe they want to go to medical school. Whatever your kid ends up deciding that they want to do is obviously going to make a huge impact on the amount of money that you're going to be contributing, most likely. And that you probably can't, looking at my 3.5-year-olds, I don't know what they have planned in terms of college yet. So we'll figure out as we go along. But because there's so many unknowns, you just need to think about what are your specific goals. Are you willing to pay for 100% of their college costs no matter where they decide they want to go? Are you willing to chip in part of it, but then you want them to participate in some of the costs? Or maybe you want them to take out some student loans, or you want them to work or something. Are you willing to contribute a set amount and then they can take that and go to whatever school they want, and that's up to them? You just kind of need to think about what your goals are for what you're going to be contributing. And you also want to think about who else might be contributing. So if they have, if their other parent might be contributing, if their grandparents or someone else. Also keep in mind if they end up getting scholarships, that's going to change how much they need. There's just a lot of unknowns, but you can at least control the part of, I know what my goals for what I'm contributing are. I want to, maybe I want to be prepared to pay 100% no matter what school they chose. So I want to make sure that I'm prepared to cover 4 years of the most expensive school there is. Or maybe, I just want to contribute $10,000 per year and then they can figure out the rest. Just think about what your goals are. And once you kind of think about that and get a very, very rough estimate of what you think that's going to end up costing, worst case scenario or best case scenario or whatever, then you kind of need to work backwards and figure out, okay, what do I need to be saving along the way in order to reach that target amount by the time my kids are at college age? And there's a lot of online calculators that allow you to put in like, okay, if I start with this amount and I put in this much per month, how much is that going to grow in the next 15, 16 years or whatever? There's calculators that'll help you estimate what you actually need to save in order to get there. But here's another extra complication with that. So you probably don't want to overshoot the amount that you'll need to pay for college. So you don't want to just put tons and tons of money in this account and just be like, oh, well, I'll just have leftovers if they don't need it. Because if you have more money than you need at the end, you only have a couple of different options. So one is if you have multiple kids, for example, if you have one kid that uses up all of theirs, but then the other one doesn't end up needing their college account, you can take the funds from one account and move it to the other one. As long as they're family members, and I don't know how strict they are about the definition of family members, but I know that you can definitely like shift the money between siblings accounts. You could even open up a 529 account for yourself and use your kids' leftover money, and you could go back to school and, take cooking classes or whatever. But if you truly don't need to use that money for education costs, and you need to take that excess money out, there are going to be some consequences tax-wise. So remember we talked about that gain on top of what you've contributed, the gain in the investments that you've had. We were avoiding paying taxes on that gain in the 529 account. Well, if you don't use that money for educational purposes, you have to go back and pay that capital gain, which can be a decent chunk of money if it's been sitting there growing for a long time. And then you'll also need to pay a 10% penalty on that gain. So you'll pay the normal taxes that you would have paid anyways, plus an additional 10% tax penalty. So that's why I'm suggesting don't put more money into this account than you need, because if you need to take it out for some other purposes, you're going to pay taxes and you're going to pay penalties. Now, these taxes and the penalties, that's not the end of the world. If you have to do that, that's not terrible, because if that would have been in a regular investing account, you would have been paying taxes anyways. And that extra 10% penalty, it's like, well, you had tax-free growth for that many years. So yeah, the government's going to ding you a little bit. That's actually not that unfair. So you can't just like take a bunch of money, put it into a college savings account, let it grow tax-free, and then use it to go on vacation or to remodel your kitchen or something. This is money that you really only want to be putting money that you expect to be using for college into this type of account, which usually that's not an issue. Usually people don't end up with totally overfunded 529s. I don't see that too often. But again, you just want to make sure that you're only putting in as much as you really need to. So now we've talked about what type of accounts you can use. 529s are, I think, a really good choice. It depends on your situation. There are some other options, but that's kind of getting a little far into the weeds. But check out 529 plans. You can open them at really most financial institutions, or you can open it with your state plans. Some states will actually offer some extra tax benefits. It's not the norm, but there's a few states that offer some incentives on the contributions. So check out your state's rules. And then once you have the account, you can check out the fund lineup and choose which investments are going to be right based on your kid's age. And then hopefully you'll be able to kind of figure out how much money you need to be putting in there. It's not going to be an exact science, but you'll know, you'll have a good idea of what you should be contributing. So I hope that helps. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments. If you come up with questions later, you can always send them to me. Again, Google 529 plans in my state and see what kind of options you find. If you have any questions, you can always reach out. I'm happy to chat with you. And then again, if you have other topics that you want to hear me talk about, I'm certainly happy to cover those. So I will be posting a recording of this in my Instagram, IGTV. It'll be in my Instagram feed. I'll save it all over the place so you can watch the rest if you came in late. So if there are no other questions, then thanks so much for joining me, everyone, and I'll see you next week.